which will take around 40 to 45 minutes on the beginning of Napier's playground, which will cover the years 1928 to 1939. So when I refer to the Marine Parade in the context of my talk today, it is defined as the roadway and foreshore between what is now the Napier Conference Centre and the Sound Shell. But before we get to 1929, let's have some brief background on the Marine Parade, especially if you are a visitor here today to the fine city of Napier. So the areas that I'm going to be looking at today is, so the Napier Conference Centre is around about here. That's the Tom Parker Fountain. Discussed the lawn area there, the lawn area there. That's what I'm going to refer to as the auditorium. Before that, the Kirk Sundial, the Sun Bay, or Veronica Sun Bay, and the colonnades, and of course the sun show, which I think I might have mentioned, and the lights and lamps, which are just out of picture. So Resident Magistrate and Commissioner of Crown Lands in Hawke's Bay, Alfred Dommett, had marked out a road in 1855 called Beach Road, which extended from around Coote Road to Emerson Street. This road would become known as the Marine Parade in the 1870s and later be extended north towards the breakwater and south of Emerson Street. So this is Napier in 1864. As you can see, there is no Beach Road, as it was then called. Napier had apparently been called a hopeless place for a town site, and perhaps we can see why. We have the sea on one side and the swamps on the other side of the township. To give you your bearings, that is where the first Masonic Hotel was. It's now in that area there. So the present Masonic or Art Deco Masonic Hotel is in that area there. Before the 1931 Hawke's Bay earthquake, the Pacific Ocean would in stormy seas crash right over into Hastings Street and damage buildings. And on one occasion, actually knocked over some small school children in Hastings Street. A seawall was built to try and protect in the 1860s, but it was not well constructed, and on beach shingle with no firm foundations. It was eventually washed away. The 1874-75 courthouse was a particular concern in stormy seas, and as can be seen, the beach in the late 1870s came almost to its front door. So this is now the dock centre. We are behind that building, to give you some bearings. On one occasion the sea did, and it smashed the front window with the shingle. Once during another rough storm, with the courthouse being threatened by the high sea, a telegram was delivered down the road to the Napier Borough Council with the words to this effect: if our building is damaged again, you'll end up paying for it due to your lack of protecting our beachfront buildings. The council's response was to build groins, which was timber vertical to the ocean, and there they are there. There's one of them there, and the other one is there. The idea being of which was to trap shingle between them and build up the beach's height this way. This, however, was not overly successful. When George Swan became mayor in 1885, he vowed to build a seawall and then beautify the Marine Parade with a promenade lined with trees, and he achieved this by 1890. Prison labour built the seawall from the courthouse towards Coote Road, and contractors built the other wall, which eventually went right through to Warren Street. When the American humorist and writer Samuel Clemens, as he was better known, some of you get the joke already, Mark Twain visited Napier in 1895 on a speaking tour, and he stayed at the Masonic Hotel, which of course faced then the Marine Parade. While at the Masonic, he wrote while reflecting on his bad health: "Bad teeth in the colonies. A citizen told me they don't have teeth filled, but pull them out, and put in false ones. And now and then, one sees a young lady with a full set. She is fortunate. I wish I had been born with false teeth and a false liver and false carbuncles. I should get along better. He wrote of the Marine Parade foreshore, I think it was a good stroke of luck that knocked me on my back in Napier. Here we have the smooth and placidly complaining sea at our door, with nothing but us, 20 yards of shingle. Away down here, 55 degrees south of the equator, the sea seems to murmur in an unfamiliar tongue, a foreign tongue, a tongue bred among the ice fields of the Antarctic, a murmur with a note of melancholy, in it proper to the vast unvisited solitude it has come from. It was very delicious and solacing to wake up in the night and to find it still pulsing there. That has to be one of the great descriptions of the sea at Marine Parade by a very great man. Now the joke with that is, there used to be a saying called see Naples and die. So after you'd seen Naples, all you could do was die because you'd seen the best. Now, Ahuriri used to be called, for you visitors, Ahuriri used to be called the Spit. So Mark Twain said, see Naples and die, but see Napier and spit. He loved the place. A key driver of activities to occur on the Marine Parade was from a group called the 30,000 Club, which was a type of beautifying and economic advancement society all rolled into one. And its aim was to exist until the population of Napier reached 30,000. They had formed in 1912 and took a particular interest in the development of the Marine Parade. And some might say they had become rather obsessed with the Marine Parade. Napier, it must be remembered, had little land available to build on then. The Marine Parade foreshore had already been utilised for the municipal baths in 1910 and the Swan paddling pools in 1918. The 30,000 Club had paid for lighting part of the Marine Parade in 1915 when the electricity had come along a couple of years before, and a children's playground, which you can see on screen now, in 1922 on the beach next to the municipal baths. The 30,000 Club came up with an idea in the mid-1920s to create a foreshore on the Marine Parade which they could put improvements such as lawns and a garden. Their idea was to create a higher foreshore by building a sloping retaining wall on the beach about 30 metres parallel to the existing seawall. This area extended from the municipal baths to about Emerson Street. So that's round about where Ocean Spa is now to Emerson Street. Rough seas would carry the shingle over the retaining wall where it would be trapped and gradually build up the foreshore. There was plenty of shingle as it was carried northwards by the Narrow River from the Narrow River and Cape Kidnappers. The 30,000 Club, through their annual Mardi Gras, raised significant funds. They offered to pay for the retaining wall. In response to a question at a council meeting about the retaining wall, Mayor John Vigor-Brown stated, the 30,000 Club is taking responsibility for it. The council has no liability. If the whole structure is washed into the sea, it does not interest us. Actually, that's it there. So there's round about where Ocean Spa is in that area there. That's the retaining wall that they built. So the idea was the sea's got rough, as you can see how far the sea up was in those days. The sea got rough, went over that retaining wall and carried shingle with it, and they trapped it. And I'll explain about how they did that. So there it is now. By mid-1928, the retaining wall had been approved by the Napier Borough Council. 18 kg iron rails were driven as piles into the shingle on an angle and spaced 1.2 metres apart. The piles would be 300 millimetres below the level of the parade promenade path. Timber sheeting was to be bolted onto the piles, and the sheeting was to be gradually raised to the full height of the piles as the beach behind the retaining wall was filled with shingle by the sea's action. When the self-reclamation had been completed, the upper section of the sheeting would be removed and replaced with concrete coping, as you can see there. and securely bonded into the upper portion of the iron rail piles. The iron rails were given a protective coating of asphalt and driven in an angle so as to afford little resistance as possible to the sea. So you can actually see kind of where the sleepers would have been driven into the rails. So I had to research all rails to... I've been unsure for a long time whether actually that is the original, but I'm now 99% convinced based on the descriptions that it is actually the original wall. As can be seen from the photo taken days after the earthquake, the system worked and we can see the top of the coping concrete wall. In fact, at the end of 1930, the Napier Borough Council had received a request from a man wishing to develop a mini putting course on the foreshore opposite Emerson Street. The 1927 Foreshore Act gave the authority for the Napier Borough Council to lease the regained land for peppercorn rental from the Harbour Board, as they had authority over the land to the high water mark. So it wasn't as simple as them just saying, well, that's ours now. So this photo shows the depth of the original 1889 seawall. Even without the 30 clubs retaining wall, for years the shingle through rough seas had been pushing up against the retaining wall. And this photo shows the depth of the original sea wall. During the 7.8 magnitude 3rd February 1931 earthquake, Hawke's Bay, with buildings collapsing around in the Napier CBD, policemen had run around urging people to go to the Marine Parade for safety. And according to eyewitness accounts, and at some point, and apparently at the order of the harbour master, an order was given by a man shouting on a motorbike to leave the Marine Parade as a tsunami could arrive. So an evacuation order to go to Bluff Hill was given. So this photo was taken easily within 15 minutes of the 1931 earthquake. And you can see there, basically, from the photo of the wall that I gave you and this one, actually how close it bridged the gap. So this was a view up Tennyson Street, which they were looking at when they were on the Marine Parade. So they made up to their way up to Bluff Hill via Coot Road. That's the Masonic Hotel. That's the Art Deco Trust's premises where they are now. After the tsunami threat had passed, thousands of people sat about hopelessly on the Marine Parade foreshore, in family groups, on rugs and mattresses, surrounded by chests of drawers and any sort of effects that you could imagine, that you could care to imagine. Many chose to sleep on tents on the Marine Parade until most of them were evacuated out of Napier starting from the next day. However, some camped on the beach for a couple of weeks. Many, as can be seen, as that lady, were in shock. The Napier Borough Council came to the conclusion quickly that it needed a body other than itself to coordinate a response to the earthquake. So the Napier Citizens Control was formed on the 4th of February of 12 men. They actually did such a good job that its chairman, C.O. Morse, would become mayor, with 11 of the 12 men from the Napier Citizens Control being elected to council in May 1933. Many of the sailors from the HMS Veronica later commented that they thought the local authorities were very disorganised. So it was no wonder the mayor had the sense to get the people what they were actually doing to try and coordinate a response to the earthquake. On the 9th of March 1931, the Napier Borough Council requested Commissioner Control to replace the Napier Borough Council and the Napier Citizens Control. And 2 men were appointed, and you can see them there, Lachlan Campbell, an engineer, and John Barton, a lawyer and an accountant, who would be responsible for Napier's town planning. John Barton replied to some saying that Napier was doomed after the 1931 earthquake and would never recover. Napier still has a sea and a seafront, which will in the future, as in the past, make it an attractive town. The improvements to the Marine Parade at present contemplated will make it even more attractive than it has been. I intend to use the spoil from the Bluff Hill slip to fill in an area near the municipal baths, bounded by the retaining wall which the 30,000 Club has built. Obviously I don't know what John Barton sounds like, so that's just my best take on what he would have sounded like. The foreshore had risen about 1.8 metres in height to the 1931, thanks to the 1931 earthquake. And with the high tide mark, pushed it out further. And this was being greedily eyed up by the Napier 30,000 Club. Nature had finished what they had started. Two architects, Lewis Hay and Stanley Natush, agreed to act in an honorary capacity to advise the Napier Reconstruction Committee, formed to give advice to Commissioners John Barton and Lachlan Campbell on Napier's rebuild. So the two commissioners were appointed by the government, replaced the Napier Borough Council, and a committee called the Napier Reconstruction Committee was formed to advise the commissioners on the best way to rebuild Napier. So both Lewis and Stanley developed plans for the Marine Parade, which were donated to the commissioners and the Reconstruction Committee in 1931. The plans had an area and lawn between the 30,000 Club's retaining seawall and the original seawall stretching from the children's play area to Emerson Street, so the children's play area that I showed you before in the PowerPoint. Shrubs and rock gardens would be planted and paths created. An auditorium, which would be a large concreted area, would be constructed and used for open-air dancing and skating. The auditorium's concrete floor would be sunk 18 inches and flooded with water when the auditorium wasn't in use, to be used as a mirror pond suitable for model yachts. Mention was made of a semicircular area which would be roofed and have a shell-shaped roof. Now that area they're talking about is now the Veronica Bay. Interestingly enough, they also suggested a dual roadway from Emerson Street southwards and using the Norfolk Pines and seawall to divide the roads. The work on the lawn area began late in 1931. So there's the 30,000 Club's retaining wall along there. Debris from quake-ruined buildings was deposited onto the foreshore, and then soil from the Bluff Hill slip, together with soil and clay from water reservoirs being constructed on Bluff Hill, were used. Work scheme labour during the Great Depression was also used. It appears the 30,000 Club had some influence over Commissioner Barton to create the lawns and gardens in the reclaimed foreshore area, as many years later, Secretary of the 30,000 Club, Seymour Percy Spiller, said that he had apparently tactfully sold this idea to John Barton, as he had tried vainly in many years to sell the idea to the Napier Borough Council. The 30,000 Club met with John Barton to discuss the concrete auditorium in September 1932. It would have geometric patterns, and Stanley Natush was involved in sourcing the coloured cement which came from England. He also arranged supervision of the laying of the patterns, which had to be separately timber boxed. Three cement companies had donated 13 tonnes or 13,200 kilograms each of cement for the auditorium, to which the shingle was mixed, and then each of the sections was boxed and coloured cement was layered on top. So that there, courtesy of the Napier City Council, is what they think after drilling down original colours were. There's quite a few versions of this on coloured postcards. I think I spent more time and lost even more hair over this than anything else. But that there, which I thought was blue, is black. And you can see that's the aggregate mix that they've created, and that's that part there. So one of the zigzags was that colour, and those are the other colours there surrounding. The central mosaic pattern, as you can see, and it finished on the screen there, of the ornamental star, that's the feature in the middle, was not completed until 1932. And in the meantime, they covered it in the area in limestone, 4 inches deep. And this wouldn't be completed until late 1933. A semicircular bay, which is there, so to get your bearings, that's now where the Veronica Sun Bay is. Note there's no sound shell there yet. A semicircular bay immediately in front of the auditorium was started in early 1933. A retaining wall was created and backfilled with debris from the earthquake ruins. Williams Hanna, the shoe retailer, his concrete slab earthquake debris from his building was used to fill and protect the retaining wall from any large seas. Over the years, since 1933 and plus, more shingle has gradually built up the foreshore. And even after the uplift of some 1.8 metres on the foreshore, wild storms could still 10 or so years after lash the edges of the Marine Parade building, such as up there. While the progress of the Lawns Garden and Auditorium had progressed with much excitement and national admiration, it made news all around New Zealand, it would be what was planned on the semi-circular bay by the 30,000 Club that would be most controversial. The end of Commissioner control occurred in May 1933. The 30,000 Club then became more aggressive, at least openly, in their plans for the Marine Parade when the new Borough Council took control. With so many competing post-quake projects, the Council could not devote significant resources to the Marine Parade. However, the Carnival Committee of the annual Mardi Gras Festival, the Napier retailers and the 30,000 Club all had considerable funds, and they were available because of their fundraising efforts. J.R. Kirk, who was a past mayor of Gisborne, offered a gift of a sundial to the people of Napier, which was installed in August 1933 and has the words inscribed on it, "Serene I stand amongst the flowers to tell the passing of the hours, and smiles equal sunshine in helping folks along." A lawn area, which now forms the front of the sound shell, was laid down in grass in September 1933, which was also filled with earthquake rubble before soil and grass seed was planted. This was planned as a children's playground, and as such, the council decided no shrubs or rock gardens would be laid in that area. After the new council had taken office in May 1933 from Commissioner Control, Councillor A.B. Hurst announced some council money would be available for future beautification of the Marine Parade. And the plans included more gardens, paths, and some tennis courts. 2 weeks later, the 30,000 Club released their own plans for the Marine Parade. There would be a seaside pavilion, which they said was something Commissioner John Barton had been most keen on, so you'd better do it. What was about to occur was 18 months of disagreements between the Napier Borough Council and the 30,000 Club and many other groups and individuals regarding the seaside pavilion. It was a bit of a free-for-all, which may have a bit of a contemporary ring. The 30,000 Club prepared several plans, including purchasing the old YMCA site and operating hot water baths in a building there, and then a seaside pavilion on the seaward side of the Marine Parade wall, linked by an ornamental arch. So this is where the domed building is now, the Lone Star, that Ban Rotunda, which was in front of this is pre-earthquake obviously, in front of the Masonic. You can just see the edge of the Masonic that burnt down. The plan was, that's the ruins of it, the plans was for the 30,000 Club to purchase that site, put hot baths there because people love hot baths and it would make money, and put an arch across the Marine Parade and connect it to a seaside pavilion on the other side. So these are architect Louis Hay's plans for an entertainment centre, an arch over the Marine Parade, which was developed as an entranceway to Napier, likely at the southern end of the parade. At a meeting in July 1933, the 30,000 Club's plans for the parade were discussed with members of the Carnival Fund, which was a group set up to administer the funds from the January's Mardi Gras Festival and other interested organisations. However, no agreement could be reached as to the Marine Parade improvements. What was occurring was a disagreement between various interested organisations about putting a building on the Marine Parade foreshore, opposite the former YMCA building. Many Napier citizens, when they became aware of the Napier 30,000 Club's Marine Parade Seaside Pavilion scheme, were not happy about any building on the Marine Parade foreshore and potentially blocking the sweep of the bay views. So the main objections you're going to hear about are blocking the sweep of the bay. The first of what would be a typical response to any buildings appearing on the parade appeared in the Daily Telegraph newspaper in August 1933. The writer quoted Byron, "Roll on, thou dark and deep blue ocean, roll. Man marks the earth with his ruin. The control stops with the shore. Not these days," said the writer, and went on to say, the Marine Parade development is just a money-making scheme for the council, and said amongst other things, the charm and ever-loveliness of the sea, the sunshine on the waves, the breakers rolling in, or in an angry mood, are most to be enjoyed, either consciously or subconsciously, when all seen at a glance, in an uninterrupted line. The very fact that we are alone with nature, and here, man's buildings do not and encroach our views as in every other town and village. These thoughts fill heart and soul with quiet peace. Very poetic. Newspaper editorial a few days later stated, "Most of Napier citizens will not agree with the Seaside Pavilion. The 30,000 Club has completed many projects which has Napier in its debt, but erecting a building on the Marine Parade waterfront on a site almost on the opposite end of Emerson Street cannot, however, be added to the list of schemes which the club has earned Napier's gratitude. The council, which will have the final say on the matter, should have little hesitation in reaching a decision which has an interest for the people of the whole of Hawke's Bay." A response from an unnamed businessman argued Napier should position itself as a major tourist resort. Fancy that. It was only by looking to the future and by providing visitors with the things that they desire that any place could take itself as a leading resort. The 30,000 Club became the object of some rather upset Napier people. Just because they have £500 to spare, they are allowed to erect an eyesore on the seaward side of the parade, shutting off a great portion of the view. Are these gentlemen whose foresight and taste provided us with distorting mirrors at the baths and that soul-stirring Yankee hurly-gurly of pre-crack memories that used to make the cats in Emerson Street look to their laurels? This was in reference to the distorting mirrors purchased by the 30,000 Club as a fundraising activity at the municipal baths, which most of the population disliked, and the Mardi Gras procession up Emerson Street. However, a meeting between the 30,000 Club and the Napier Borough Council was held early in September 1933 regarding the Seaside Pavilion in regard to their formal application to build. This version of the Seaside Pavilion, the second one, seems to be smaller than the first plans, which included the archway and the hot baths building. But from descriptions, the building was substantial and could hold 1,000 people. The Napier Borough Council Town Planning Committee had seen the plan to erect the Seaside Pavilion 64 metres from the coloured bay, or the auditorium, and passed it back to the full council with no comments. This, they say, was put in the too hard basket. To break an impasse over the Seaside Pavilion, the full council met with a deputation of groups, including, of course, the 30,000 Club. The 30,000 Club's building would be a temporary one, containing a hall seating 1,000 people and an outside sound box. The site was in the semicircular bay area. It was likely, by referring to this building as temporary, the public may soften its attitude to a building being on the foreshore. The 30,000 Club, according to member William Harvey, believed that there was only one way of developing the Marine Parade, and that's by putting a building there. The battle lines were drawn between those who believed Napier would progress through the Marine Parade and those, including the local MP, W.E. Barnard, who wanted to protect Barnard wanted the Marine Parade to be developed, and those who wanted to protect this sweep of the bay. The council would consider the 30,000s Club application in September 1933, and just before this, a group of local architects gave their opinion on the matter. Architect Louis Hay stated, £4,000 is inadequate for this building of that sort, and the site is clearly not suitable. I quote Lewis, I can't imagine that a club whose principals its members numbered half a dozen, calling itself the 100,000 Club, would obtain permission to erect a building on the beach for this or any other purpose. Our beautiful foreshore is one that everybody in Napier must feel proud of, and it is our duty to not only to decorate it, but to protect it. Despite his criticism, Louis Hay has made his own drawings of a seaside pavilion, which are on the screen now. So that's the auditorium or the skating rink. It is not known, it does not appear that these plans were ever made public, but it does seem strange in light of his comments that any development of the semicircular bay should be well out from the retaining wall so that the views towards the kidnappers in the northeast will not be interrupted. Architect E.A. Williams said, Napier is noted elsewhere for its uninterrupted view of the sea and for the sweep of the bay, and to put a building there would be an absolute mistake. Rennie Natush, which I think is Guy's father, said by erecting any sort of building of the nature proposed along the foreshore, we would be spoiling the opportunity for making the foreshore attractive along natural lines. My contention is that if a permit is granted for one building, others must be permitted at a later date. H.A. Westerholm suggested moving the pavilion next to the municipal bars down near the Ocean Spa area. In early October 1933, an announcement was made by the Napier Borough Council regarding the 30,000 Club's Seaside Pavilion. Wait for it, it was declined. The Napier Borough Council would, however, provide £500 towards improvements on the Marine Parade, and in particular, a band rotunda as part of a covered bay and including masonry and glass in the semicircular bay. So we're going to place the pergola and have the glass, and inside of that have a band rotunda. It was hoped there would be cooperation between the Carnival Committee and the 30,000 Club over their plans. Translation, the council needed their money. A meeting on the 31st of October 1933 announced agreement amongst all interested organisations in the Marine Parade development for a winter garden and a band rotunda on the semicircular bay. A 1.5 high metre bay of glass windows described as a transparent wall in the form of a pergola which would be wrapped around the bay, would have a 10-foot wide path on the land side with a roof of equal width. On the seaside, there would be a 7-foot cantilevered concrete walk. Inside the structure would be the band rotunda. All seemed to be very pleased with this proposal, especially in terms of preserving the views of the ocean. For the funds to be committed for the project, the Napier Borough Council would provide about 20% of that cost. The 30,000 Club, not surprisingly, the biggest contributor, had also agreed and promised to give another $100 for some tennis courts. By the end of November 1933, tenders were called after plans were submitted by architect J.T. Watson. However, the Napier Borough Council, who called for the tenders on the plans before Christmas 1933, stated in January 1934 that the modified proposal from the Napier 30,000 Club wasn't in accordance with original plans, and the cost of tenders did not meet the approved budget. A deputation of 16 businessmen, headed by Dr. H.L. Zeal and other residents, also met with C.O. Morse and Mayor C.O. Morse in January 1934 to complain about the 30,000 Club's plans for the semicircular bay, and also to get an undertaking that the structure would not go ahead. When asked about this, R.C. Wright of the 30,000 Club stated, as far as he knew, the work would go on. Not so, said Mayor Morse. The matter is unsettled. Therefore, at the end of January 1934, cuts to the plans were made to save costs, such as using less plate glass and dispensing with a cantilever walk around the seaward side. However, at a February meeting of the Napier Borough Council, they made a decision to complete just the pergola in the semicircular bay and to do the tennis courts. That is, no band rotunda. The 30,000 Club was furious and disappointed at the council's attitude. Yet another meeting would be held to try and get some resolution between them and the Napier Borough Council. However, the project could not proceed without the financial support of the 30,000 Club. By the end of April 1934, there was still no progress. A suggestion was made to employ an arbitrator, J.W. Mason, but the 30,000 Club would not agree. In May 1934, a deadlock seemed to be impassable. The 30,000 Club still refusing to accept an arbitrator. Discussion centred on where to put the band rotunda, as was now not part of the semicircular bay. And the 30,000 Club threw the whole scheme back to the council saying, "Will you come up with a plan then?" In June, they did this, with a plan for the Marine Parade improvements for the semicircular bay prepared by the engineer to the council, Mr. W.D. Corbett. In August, the parties were still at it. Mayor Sarah Morse wanted the semicircular bay completed at a cost of £1,000 and said it was high time that some action be taken to advance the foreshore. The Carnival Committee and the 30,000 Club would be invited to subscribe the remaining £500. The building of the band rotunda was where the disagreement was still at. In a conciliatory move, Mayor Sarah Morse said in regard to the failure of the original plan that was submitted by the 30,000 Club for the semicircular bay that I do not suggest that the blame be attached to the 30,000 Club. I greatly appreciate the efforts of the club. They have done wonderful work, and although only a small body of men, they have been of great benefit to the town. The Napier Council was putting some grovelling feelers out to the 30,000 Club. The Duke of Gloucester was to visit Napier at the end of 1934, and the council was anxious to finish the semicircular bay pergola with the cooperation of the Carnival Committee and the 30,000 Club. In other words, we want your money, honey. Plans were to be submitted to the Council Works Committee for approval. The question of the band rotunda still unresolved. At a speech to the Napier Rotary Club on the 1st of October 1934, C.O. Morse said the matter of the Marine Parade improvements had been battered about from pillar to post, and he once again appealed to the 30,000 Club, who he now was calling a valuable body of men. Although we have not always seen eye to eye with one another, for the sake of our little town we are so proud of, let us remember the service to which we owe the town and its people. The next day of the 2nd of October, it was announced a bandstand, a movable one, would be installed on the Marine Parade. The Daily Telegraph stated, to have conceived the idea was a piece of true ingenuity, and the individual who did so must be credited with a rare capacity for compromise and conciliation. The semicircular bay pergola would go ahead with agreement from all parties. When the announcement was made as to the Marine Parade improvements, Councillor C.D. Cox stated, the ratepayers thought we were a lot of messes, never able to agree on anything, and from their point of view, never getting anywhere. In fact, as a council, we appear to be all over the place. The Mayor took offence at this. Withdraw that comment, Councillor Cox. I have heard it repeatedly about streets. Councillor Chadwick. Councillor Cox is in a humorous mood tonight. Councillor Cox. I am. I've already had a bite already. Councillor Ashcroft. I've been told that we are the finest council his Napier has ever had, but we have done nothing, and I have been congratulated upon the nothingness of our work. It was revealed at that meeting that there had indeed J.W. Horson, the town planner, the proposed arbitrator, was used by the parties to bring about a resolution. No doubt driven by wanting to show Napier off to the member of the royal family visiting in December, the Duke of Gloucester. Work started on the pergola in October. You see that building that are on the screen now, to be completed before the 19th of September 1934, the visit of the Duke. Such was the excitement that the contractors had a public gallery of Napier people watching them build it. The 30,000 Club, however, did not waste any time. In November, the foundations for their 800-pound sound shell from architect J.T. Watson were laid. Immediately comments were made as to the question of the visibility for the 7-metre-high sound shell. How could this be temporary? Many asked Mayor C.O. Morse when the solid concrete foundations were being laid. The Mayor answered that these had been laid at the council's club's own risk, and no definite permission could be given for the construction of the building in the position for the structure. Plans prepared for the Marine Parade Rotunda and Bencho and Pergola by architect J.T. Watson were provisionally accepted by the council but later discarded. So, in other words, the plans that Watson had made before and the council discarded after calling for tenders, he took them to court and got £70 judgment out of them. Slide 32. Upon seeing the sound shell's foundations, Dr. Zeal, who led a deputation earlier in the year to complain to the Mayor about a building being on the parade, once again tried to do the same. So Dr. Zeal, who had led a deputation in January 1934 to say you must stop this, said, I'm coming to see you again, I'm not happy with what's going up there, and the Mayor basically told him to go away. And anyone else, for that matter, that comes to see me about the sound shell, Dr. Zeal said, in no way is this a temporary structure, and this is far removed from the category. I won't say slide 33 this time. It was announced that the sound shell will be completed in time for the Duke's visit, and the pergola was almost finished. And finished it was, and officially opened on the 19th of December 1935 at the visit of the Duke of Gloucester. It was said of the sound shell that thousands gathered on the parade, and they were more than happy about the effect of it. Many concerts were held in December, and the sound shell's ability to carry sound with clarity was noted. In 1934, the Veronica Ship's Bell was given to the Napier Borough Council, and the pergola, or the central or Sun Bay as it became known, was renamed as the Veronica Sun Bay in 1937. In 1991 it was rebuilt as, minus the glass windows, its salt had corroded the structure. At a council meeting held in 1935, the council then allowed the sound shell to permanently reside in the present location, like they really had any choice. After a lively discussion, in which the councillors finally agreed it was of benefit to Napier. However, Councillor A.B. Hurst noted, meaning of temporary was quite different to what had occurred, which he thought it could be shifted around. It appears the 30,000 Club had got one over the council and proving to them that the sound shell was a most worthwhile scheme. The 30,000 Club took the resolution regarding the sound shell as a licence to provide further additions to the area. They wanted to add some side wings to the side shell and to construct a colonnade effect towards the semicircular central or Sun Bay, or Veronica Bay as it became known. It was announced at the council meeting in January 1935 that the club wanted to give £800 towards this. Councillor Bedford asked, to do what? The Mayor replied, to do colonnade work, something like we have on the semicircular bay. It will not further obstruct the view, I hope, replied Councillor Bedford. The colonnade was completed in 1935. The arches in the colonnade were not fully enclosed so as not to block the view. But in December 1935, 5 canvas screens were ordered, 3 coloured in red and white for the sides and the northern end, and 2 in a continental design to be placed either side of the sound shell. This was to enclose the area against chilly breezes during concerts, especially in the winter. And it also sneakily meant that the 30,000 Club could charge for concerts. An extension of the colonnade was made when the Harold Latham Arch was completed in 1936, and it was named after one of the late 30,000 Club members, and completed in a light buff shade. Friends of Mr. Latham and the 30,000 Club personally paid for the £100 cost. Harold Latham had initiated paddling pool, the sand pit, and the children's playground on the Marine Parade foreshore prior to 1931. 2 years later, in March 1938, the 30,000 Club approached the Napier Borough Council to complete the colonnade at the club's cost. There would be 2 arches in the colonnade, one named for another club member, Robert C. Wright, and a large arch in the middle to be known as Arch or Remembrance, as the new Napier Arch. And Bill Dalton, our current mayor, his dad, Doug, actually worked on the colonnade. And the colonnade was completed there in 1939. Napier menswear businessman Tom Parker announced he was willing to donate £1,000, but in today's terms, about $115,000 towards a fountain. And he wanted the fountain to be known as the Tom Parker Fountain, but not as a memorial to him. Figure that one out. Great excitement was had by the generous donation, and the Mayor, Charles Morse, said, "People will come from all over the North Island to see the Tom Parker Fountain, which would be the only one of its kind in New Zealand." The fountain was purchased in New York and arrived in New Zealand around the 15th of November 1936. However, by the 24th of November, the fountain still hadn't arrived in Napier. The fountain finally arrived, and it was described as having huge lamps bearing a resemblance to searchlights, circular rings, jets, and nozzles figured prominently in an almost bewildering display array of apparatus, the assembly of which was to be commenced as soon as the concrete base to the fountain was completed. It was hoped to get the fountain completed by Christmas 1936. Here is Tom next to his fountain. There was some controversy about the opening of the fountain, which was planned for Christmas Eve 1936. Napier retailers had become quite upset as they thought it would interfere with the shopping. So a request was made to the council to open the fountain a day earlier. Mayor Charles Morse and the other councillors agreed. The ceremony was held at the sound shell with special wiring to enable the fountain to be turned on from there. The weather wasn't good for the opening, and many on the hill watched from the comfort of their own homes out of the rain, and others parked in their cars on the parade to watch the switch on. In January 1937, however, it was noted that the lawns on the other side of the fountain were sinking. Water was being blown and pooling on the grass and causing the ground to sink. The fountain times were restricted at night or turned off in gusty conditions. In the end, they just reduced the spray so it didn't fall outside of the fountain. The children's playing ground on the south side of the bars, and that's where the Tom Parker Fountain is now, that's all in lawn, would be shifted to make room for a new lawn area north of the Tom Parker Fountain. So, sorry, that's it shifted, so that's where Ocean Spa area is around there now. So it was previously on that other side. The cluster lights, which you can see there, which are still with us today, were installed just before the earthquake in the late 1920s, 1930. So next to them are 9 gas lamps, those ones there, which were converted to carbon arc in 1915 when electricity was in Napier by, you guessed it, the 30,000 Club. Note the scales there. In 1934, the lights were removed from the Marine Parade and put over that side there. I think around about the early 1980s, I think they were removed. I'm not quite sure on that, but they were finally removed. So they were there and they were put over there. So the Norfolk Pines, just in conclusion, the Norfolk Pines on Marine Parade did not escape damage from the earthquake, with the area closest to the fires, that's about the Emerson area to Tennyson Street, suffered from the heat of the fires, and for whatever reason, several of them had to be replaced around 1933. The Napier Borough Council Superintendent of Reserves, Charles Corner, reported about the health of the trees regularly, and even pumping intravenously liquid cow manure into one to try and save it. Being suffocated by tar seal doesn't help them at that stage at all back then. The lighting of the trees began in 1936, where the colours were distributed disproportionately among the branches of the trees. So it was decided later in that year, 1936, to give a distinctive colour for pine trees, the colours being green, amber, red and blue. That's the coloured postcard you're seeing. During World War II, the lights were switched off which makes me question somewhat the submarine story of the Germans on the U-boats and lights, sights and sounds of the brightly lit Marine Parade on a weeknight. After the war, due to certain power shortages, they were turned only on for special occasions such as Christmas Eve. Then later on, the lights on the trees went on for Friday nights. In the 1950s, they were eliminated every night. And they, of course, have been since returned to different colours as they've worn out over the years. Oops. The Napier's Marine Parade in its infancy, I've tried to illustrate, wasn't an easy path for the Napier Borough Council, or those such as the 30,000 Club trying to create improvements. The toll on C.O. Morse was so great he moved to Dargaville in 1939 after his term of mayor had completed from 1933 to 1938 to commence a business as a builder. Joyfully though, he lived a full life, passing away at age 89 in 1975 in the Bay of Islands. Many more controversies would occur regarding the Marine Parade in the years to come, and many more plans made. Some happened, some didn't. However, along with the people of Napier, visitors from all over New Zealand and the world were full of praise for what was achieved in the Marine Parade area from 1928 to 1939, just as we still do today. It is pleasing that the areas that I have discussed today are nearly all with us, and long may it remain the beautiful parade, which not only the Napier people can be proud of and enjoy, but the whole of Hawke's Bay and visitors to the stunning region of Hawke's Bay. Thank you for your patience and your attention.